I'm going to spend a few minutes introducing you to a new offering from Cordial Business Advisors called the Business Model Disruption Workshop. Now, the issue we're trying to tackle here is the corporate planning process, which every company has, trying to figure out what are we going to do next year, maybe differently from what we did last year, but all too often it's only an extrapolation of the past. More of this, less of that, better this. But we need, in an age of disruption, where the mean time between surprises is getting amazingly short in most industries, to look around the corner to try to figure out what could come out of left field and really blindside us. We have many examples of companies that have failed to do this. One is Garmin, if you recall back in the day when we had these little devices we put in our cars that would help us get GPS guidance. They had a fantastic run until around 2007, and nobody thought that a company like Apple, which then introduced the iPhone, back then it was just making computers and little music machines, iPods, no one thought that they would suddenly become the GPS source of choice. And as you can see from the graphic here, Apple and the introduction of iPhone and then other smartphones basically wiped Garmin off the face of the earth. We have other examples. Kodak, which, as all of you know, is now bankrupt and gone, was basically replaced by Facebook and other social media where people post their digital photos. But what if Kodak actually had imagined Facebook? And in fact, they were pretty close to doing something similar, but it was killed internally by people who tend to look into the past and have their heads so far stuck down into the sand that only their toes are showing sometimes. Look at Nintendo, a company that's still alive and kicking, but really struggling in the competitive arena of casual gaming, which has moved from proprietary devices over onto these same smartphones. What if Nintendo had imagined a super slam dunk hit such as Minecraft instead of being surprised by it? What we have done with the Business Model Disruption Workshop is develop a three-step approach to help management to see around those corners. Based on an understanding of the current business model, what we do is first ask them to take a step back and pretend to be their own customers. In other words, if your customer were to design your business model for you so it would please them, how would they do it? The next step, which is more radical, is to imagine a predator. Take Google as a classical example. If Google wanted to take over this industry, what would they do? That's a really, really difficult, tricky question, but if you find the right predators to challenge management with, you really start getting them outside the box in an incredible way, and then you take the third step, which is knowing now or having ideas about how our customers would design our business model, how a predator intent on disrupting the industry and killing your company would design a better business model. Now take a step back and design an ideal business model for your company from scratch as a Greenfield exercise. This is a powerful three-step model that helps the management team get out of the box and try at least to envision what might come out and surprise them. And it's not a huge exercise. It's not a massive piece of work. We tend to spend a week or two together with a team from the company preparing so that we have all the facts, we have the existing business models in place, we discuss some good predator examples we might use, and so forth. And then it's one intensive day right there in the middle where the management team gathers and goes through this three-stage process. And then, of course, some follow-up after that for about a week where you capture it and feed it into the planning process. Now, this can be done at any point in time in a company, but we like to see it as a natural component in any kind of a standardized planning process that you might have. You could say an ideal scenario would be where you would start the year, which most people do, with planning this year's planning process, and then inject the Business Model Disruption Workshop as early as possible into the process. But of course, if you've already done the plans, you've got them all set, you've got them approved by the board, but you still want to do one last tweak and stress test of it before you execute, you can also do it after the plan has been made, risking, of course, that you might end up ripping the whole thing up and starting again. That is the Business Model Disruption Workshop from Cordial.